Hello there and welcome back. In the previous episode, we added Google Maps into our app, and we also created this marker to see that everything is working. Today we're going to create the service that will get the location from the device. So the service will run in the background even when the app is closed, and every few seconds it will get the location of the device and send it to us. So we're going to start by creating a package, and we're going to call the package services. Then we can also create another package and call it UI, just to be organized, and we can select all of the UI and just drag it inside. There's some kind of visual bug here, so it takes a few minutes until it's actually inside the package. Now inside this service package, we're going to create a new file and we're going to call it location service. Now this location service will inherit from the service class, and because it inherits from the service class, we also need to implement this method. This method is used when we want to bind the service to some kind of activity and then have a connection between them, but we don't need to do that in our case, so we're simply going to return null. Then we're going to also create the onCreate method and also the onStart command method and the onDestroy method. So inside the onCreate method, so this method will run when the service is first created, we're going to use the FuseLocationProvider class to get the location. And if you remember in the previous episode, we already added the dependency for this library, okay? So now we're going to be able to use this class. So first we're going to declare it over here. Over here, we're going to initialize it. Location services, get fused, location provider, client, and we pass in the context. So now, in order to start the service, we have to provide it with a notification. And since API level 26, we also have to create a notification channel. So we're going to do it over here. Later, we're also going to take care of the notification itself. We're going to just disable it when we install the app, but we still have to create it in order to start the service because these are the limitations that were added at level 26. So over here, we're going to create the notification channel, and then we're going to create the notification itself, and we're going to pass it over here. So first we'll create an instance of the notification manager, which handles the entire process. We just give it a random name. And now that we created this channel, we're going to pass it into the notification manager and create a channel. Next, we're going to create the notification itself. And we're going to pass it with a random code inside. So instead of putting some kind of icon that will appear when this notification pops up in the device, we're going to put a transparent icon. And this transparent icon will basically be an image with nothing inside. So then when the notification appears, it will look like there is no icon. So I'm going to import it into the drawable folder. And it's basically just a transparent PNG, okay? So now we're going to reference it over here. Let's import this R, transparent. So now instead of an icon, we're simply going to see a blank image. And it's something that will help us with being more hidden, okay? Now we're done with this onCreate method. So we're going to go into this onStart command, and this is the first method that will run when the service is started. So all we need to do is create a method that will contain all the logic for getting the location. So we're going to call it getLocation. So this is just a custom method that we're going to create over here. And after we run this method, we also need to return a value, and we're going to return start sticky. And it basically means that if for some reason this service is destroyed, the app will try to run it again, okay? And now inside this get location, we're going to do all the logic to get the location. So first of all, we're going to create a location request, and it's basically just a few different settings that we can specify for this location that we want to get. So location request, and it's going to be a location request, and we're going to use this one because there are a few. So we're going to use this one, the GMS location. Create, apply, and inside we're going to specify the interval. So we basically want this service to get the location every 10 seconds. Okay, so every 10 seconds, it will get the location. And these are a few more settings. So this is the fastest interval. It means that it's not going to be less than 1 second if something goes wrong. And the max wait time, it means that we're not going to wait more than 20 seconds. Okay, so anyway, this is the important part. We want to get the location every 10 seconds. And you can put something else over here. And maybe when we actually deploy the app, we're going to put it a bit higher. But for testing purposes, we do want to put it on 10 seconds because we don't want to wait too much time to see if the service is actually working. So 10 seconds is good for now. Then we're going to put the priority. And it's basically to say that this request has a higher priority, okay? And now we're going to use this fused location client instance to get the location. So we're going to say request location updates. And inside we need to pass in the location request that we created, a location callback that will be triggered when we get the location. And over there, we're going to say what happens with this location, what we're going to do with this location. And we also need a looper. And it's basically to say that we want this to run and never stop. Okay. We don't want this location request to ever stop. So first of all, we're going to pass in the location request. Then we're going to pass in a callback. So we're going to create a location callback, and it's something that comes from this library. And the last thing will be this looper. Okay, so now it tells us that we need different permissions to get the location. And in Android, there are a few different kinds of permissions. There are actually a lot of different permissions, but there are a few levels. So some permissions are not that dangerous, okay? So we can just specify them inside the manifest. Other permissions like location are considered dangerous. So we actually need to ask the user to grant us permission. So all of these apps that open some kind of alert and ask you to grant permission to this app, okay? So this happens with location, it happens when the app wants to go into the gallery and things like that. So location is one of those dangerous permissions. So we are going to have to ask the user to grant us permission, but it doesn't really matter because we still have to install this app on the device, and we're going to have a few seconds to simply click on the button and grant the permissions. But we don't have the permissions in the manifest, so we're going to add a bunch of permissions over here, okay? And even when we do it, it will still give us this warning because it wants to make sure that we're also asking the user. But we're only going to ask the user later on. We're going to add some code. So we're going to we're going to select this little light bulb and we're going to click on suppress, okay? So we're going to suppress the missing permissions and we're going to deal with that later. We just don't want to see this warning anymore. So inside the manifest, first of all, we're going to have the internet permission. It's a permission to use the internet. Then we're going to have a permission to run a service in the background. Then we're also going to use a permission to check the state of the network. Then we're going to also use this background location because we want to get the location of the device when we're in the background, so when the app is not working. And two other permissions are permissions that are related to the location. So uses permission find location and uses permission course location. So these are all the permissions we have to declare inside the manifest. But of course, later we're going to also have to ask the user itself to click on a button and grant us permissions because we're using the location, and a location is a dangerous permission because it can be abused. And that's exactly what we are doing here. We are trying to abuse this location, but we can also bypass this. So we're going to close that, close this, and we're going to go back over here. And now we're going to create this callback, okay? So inside this callback, we're going to run this on location result. So this method will get called every time we have a location result, okay? So let's rename this parameter to location result. And we're going to simply store the location that we get. Location of type location. And it's going to be optional because maybe we don't receive a location. Maybe it's going to be null, okay? So we need to put this question mark. Location result, last location. Okay, so we simply get the last location and we store it inside this location variable. And then we check if the location is not null. So if we really got a location, we simply are going to print it because we want to check that it really works just for now. Okay, so we simply get the location from the location result and we print it into our console to see if we actually got it and if it actually works, okay? So every time, every 10 seconds that this service is running, it will trigger this callback and it will give us this location result. And then we're going to get the location from this location result and we're going to print it into the terminal so we can really see if it works. Later, we're going to take this part and we're going to display it on a map. Okay, but for now, we just want to see that it works. Next, we need to also specify that we're using this service inside the manifest. So we go into the manifest And inside the application tag, but outside of the activity, we're going to type service. The name will be our service, enabled true, foreground service type location, and exported false. Okay. So now we simply say that we're using a service inside our application. Now the next thing we want to do is to actually run our service, because all we did right now is create the service class. Okay, but we're not using it inside our app. So we're going to go to the main activity, and when this activity is created, we're going to also run the service. So somewhere over here inside the onCreate, we are going to call this method start location service, and we're going to create it over here. And inside, we're simply going to check if the service is already running, because we don't want to run two services at the same time, right? We want to run one service each time. So if this is an extension that we're going to create that will check if the service is running. But if it's not running, okay, we want to start it. So if the service is not running, service intent so we basically say what service we want to activate. We want to activate the location service, start location service, actually start foreground service, and we're going to pass in this intent. So now when we launch the app, it will run this method, and it's going to check if the service is not running, and if it's not running, it's going to start it. Okay? And now we want to create this extension. So if you don't know what extensions are, I have a video about it. You can learn about it, but it's basically methods that we can create in separate files and then just use them anywhere, because we're not going to create this method over here. We're going to create it in a separate file, and then it's going to be easier to just use these methods all over our project. So we're going to create another package, okay? And we're going to call this package utils. So this will be a utility package. It will contain all kinds of classes that help us do all kinds of things. So inside of this utils, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call it shared pref helper. So here we're going to put different extensions that are related to the shared preferences. And shared preferences are just a way to save information inside our device. So it's some sort of small database that is used to save all kinds of settings and things like that. And the reason we need this is because the way we're going to check if the service is running is by simply saving a Boolean, okay? So each time we're going to run the service, we're going to say that it is running, and we're going to save that Boolean inside the shared preferences, and then we can check what is the state of the service by going into this extension, okay? So over here, we don't need a class because we're basically just creating extensions. So we're going to create two extensions, and we're going to extend the context. Change service status and is service running. So with this extension, we're going to be able to change the state of the service. And with this one, we're going to be able to check the state, okay? So inside this, we're going to create an instance of the shared preferences. Okay, and this will be just a constant that we're going to save over here. And we're going to have another one, const val, location, service, status. So now that we get this instance, we can insert a new variable inside. So shared preferences, edit, put boolean, and this boolean is going to be called like this, and we're going to pass in a new boolean, so is running, and then commit. So the is running will be a parameter that we're going to pass in inside this method. And you're going to see how we actually use it. Then to check what is the state of the service, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to get an instance of the shared pref, and we're going to return shared pref get boolean, and we're simply getting this boolean that we inserted over here. And we set some kind of default value, so before we change the state, this will be the default value, okay? And it's something that we have to provide. So now we will go to our service, and inside the onStart command, so this is the first thing that will run when we start the service, we're simply going to change the state of the service. Change service status, right? We're simply calling this extension, and we say true. So we change the status of the service, and we say that now it's running, right? Because if we got this method, it means that the service is running. So we say true, and we save it inside the shared pref. So over here, it will simply receive this true, and it will put a boolean of true inside this variable. And then when we want to check if the service is running, we're simply going to get the boolean of this variable, okay? And back inside the location service, we're also going to go to the onDestroy method. And when the service is destroyed, of course, we need to say that it's no longer running. Now, before the location will actually work, there is one last thing that we need to do, because as I told you, the location is considered a dangerous permission, right? And we need to actually ask the user visually to give us the permission for the location, okay? So to do that, we can write all the code inside our fragment, but we don't want to do it. So we're going to create two different utility classes, and I'm going to simply give you the code because these are very long classes and they're sort of a template, okay? So you can use them in any project that you want, and you don't need to write it from scratch. And that's what we do a lot of times with libraries, right? When we get these libraries, it's basically some code that is written in a different place. And instead of writing all of this code inside our project, we're simply getting this code, this library, and we're using it inside our project by getting all of these objects. So these objects, they're actually stored in a different location, okay? So we're simply going to create a class over here inside the utils, and we're going to call it permission. And we're going to create another one. We're going to call it permission manager. So I'm going to provide these links inside the description of the video, okay? So I'm going to paste these classes over here, and you need to do the same thing. So you simply copy all of the text that you're going to find inside the link, and you're going to paste it over here. The permission, okay, and the permission manager. Now, there are a lot of red things over here, and we're going to deal with them together. We simply need to import all of these things. So we're going to start with the permission. We're going to click on all of them and press on import. Import, 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 okay? And then over here, import, import. Just always use the first option, import. So think about these classes as some kind of library that we simply are going to paste inside our project, but it could also be some kind of external library that we just reference, okay? So these two classes, you don't need to know what is written inside. These are just a lot of different methods that do a lot of things, but it's just a way to use these permissions without writing all of this code ourselves, okay? And this is just a single permission that is used inside this permission manager. So now we're going to go inside the first fragment, because this will be the first fragment that will load when we run the app. So we want to ask for these permissions inside this fragment. So over here, between this binding and this return, we're going to ask for these permissions. So we simply need to reference the permission manager. From this request permission location, okay? Rationale, so this is what we're going to ask the user. Use the location, but again, it doesn't matter because the user won't really see it. We are going to install this app, so we are going to see this alert, and we're going to simply press on OK. And then we check the permission. If the permission is granted, so the permission for the location, we're simply going to display some kind of toast. And we're going to start the location service. So we're going to call this method over here, and we don't really need to call it over here. Okay? So only if the permission is granted, we're going to start this service. And to call a method that is inside the main activity from a fragment, we're going to simply do this activity as main activity, and we're going to call this method start location. Wait a minute, it's private, so let's make it public. Start location service, okay? So we simply call this method from this fragment, but this method is actually over here inside the main activity. So if the permissions are granted, we're going to start this service. Else, we're simply going to make a toast, permission denied. So now in the main activity, we're also going to import this extension. And I think that that's all we need for the location. Now, before we run it and see if it's working, we're going to do some organizing over here. So we're going to create a few more packages because later we're going to have a lot of different files. So we don't want to get lost. Okay. So we're going to create a new package that will be called DI. So it will contain all the dependency injection. Then a package of data, a package of application, and a package of models. And that's it for now, okay? So now, if everything is in place, it should work and we should see this service starting and getting the location of this device. So maybe I forgot something and we're going to see it when we run the app. So of course, we can see now this visual alert because without us asking for permission, the location will not work. The location service will not work. So of course, when we install this app on a device, we simply need to open it for the first time and say while using the app, okay? And then it will not ask us again. And now it should start running the service. So you may notice that over here, we actually have a notification, but the notification is empty, okay? So if we draw this down, we can see that we have a notification over here. This one is from the other app that I have, but this is the notification that we're going to see. So it has the name and it has nothing inside because we set the title and the text to be blank. So there is nothing inside. And there is also no icon because you can see each notification has an icon, this one and this one. But because we placed a transparent icon, there is no icon over here, and then also the user will not see anything over here. So now let's see if this service is actually running in the background. So we can come here, click on run. So now if we wait a few seconds, we should see a print line over here with the location information. Let's wait. Okay, so we saw that the callback was called and we got the location of the device. So it simply printed out this line, the location latitude and the location longitude. And if we wait a few more seconds, it will keep calling and giving us the location of the device. Now, of course, we can also close this app entirely. So there are no apps opened and it should still give us the location. So let's wait a few more seconds. And we can see that we got the location even though the app is actually entirely closed, okay? So it's good, we know that the location services are working. Now, if we open the notification, of course, it's not a good thing that the user can see a notification over here. Although we did remove the text and the content, and we also made the icon invisible, so he doesn't see any notification. If he's going to open this, he will still see a notification and he will get suspicious. Okay, so the thing we can do is simply click and drag, click on this gear, and over here we're going to click on turn off notifications and we're going to remove the notifications from this app. So now we click on apply and we won't see any notification. So what happens right now, there is a service in the background, but the app is closed and there is no notification. So there is no way the user can know there is some kind of service running in the background, but we are getting the location. Okay, of course, right now we're simply printing it, but later we're going to show this location on a map. Okay, one thing that I want to mention, and it's important, sometimes when you test these locations on an emulator, sometimes they may cause different problems. Sometimes you won't see any updates, and that's just because the location tries to use the GPS, but your computer is not really using the GPS. It's simply getting the location by the IP address or something like that. So it's not working the same way it's going to work on a physical device. So sometimes it will simply cause you different problems and the location will not be displayed correctly. So don't think that your code is not working. Simply connect your physical device and check if everything is working. Because just know that emulators are not working well with the location services. You can still use them to test everything. You can use them to build the UI and the code. But if something is not working with the location, for example, if you're going to run this and you're not going to see any updates, but you're only going to see one update and then it will stop, just connect your physical device and test it on the device, because maybe it's a problem with the emulator. If it really happens, you can simply come here and delete this emulator, or maybe you can wipe the data and cold boot, and then maybe it will fix this problem. But just know that these emulators are causing problems when it comes to location, okay? But it doesn't mean that your code is not working. So now we know that the location service is working and our service is working and it gets the location of the device. So it will keep running even though our app is closed, and the only way to stop this service from working is by deleting the app. But usually people have a lot of different apps installed and they don't even know what apps they have. So it's not like they're going to go over each app and think, oh, I need to delete a few apps, right? Sometimes we do it, but usually we spend months with all kinds of apps installed that we don't really use. So the service can keep running for weeks and even for months sometimes if someone will not delete the app itself. Only when we delete the app, then the service will stop working. Okay? So that's all for this episode. In the next episode, we will start setting up Firebase. So Firebase is a remote database that we can send the location information to and save it online. And the reason we need to do it is because when we're going to get the location, we don't simply want to display it on the map of this device. We want to be able to send it and show it on all maps of all devices, right? Because if you're going to install this app on several devices, you want to get this location on a separate device. And the only way to send information between devices is by saving the data inside a remote database, okay? And it means a database that exists online. So that's why we're going to use Firebase for that. And when we get the location over here, we're simply going to upload it to Firebase, and then we're going to download it from Firebase and display it on the map. So this way there will be a connection between all the devices that this app is installed on. Okay? So that's all for this episode. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe, and see you next time.